Right, we're streaming now.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors, and good evening to everyone watching on the live stream. Welcome to this evening's Community Services Committee meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, do we have any apologies for absence?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest on items on the agenda. Do we have any? No. Item 3, to receive written requests for dispensation for disclosable pecuniary interest. There are none. And item 4, to grant any, therefore we don't need to. Item 5, there is no public participation. Item 6, to approve the draft open minutes of the Community Services Committee meeting held on the 20th of October 2020, which have already been circulated to everyone. Does anyone have any comments with regards to the minutes, or can we approve them? Mr. Mayor.
I've got no problem with the minutes. It was really, there were a couple of items that I probably half expected to be brought back to this committee meeting. And I was just wondering whether there was an update. One was on the dementia-friendly Stratford T3 Foundation, and the other was a simplified application form for use of the town hall.
Well, I'll answer the first one. The dementia-friendly project. At present moment, I did put, I have sent a communication out to a number of people at certain care homes in a number of wards. However, as of yet, I haven't received any response back from anyone. So under the current climate, I thought it may be more suitable to give people a little bit more time, and it may be something that would possibly be better off looking into 2021, when conditions are slightly easier to install that equipment and to provide the necessary training to utilise it. Concerning the application, the simplified application, I'm not too sure, Mr. Mayor, where we are with that at the moment. Councillor Howe.
Yes, unfortunately, that's slipped. It's still on my to-do list, but I just haven't had the time to work on that. But I will endeavour to do that for the next meeting.
That's fine. I understand. Obviously, you are very busy at the moment, so that's not a problem. Thank you, Councillor Howe.
Yeah, okay, that's
Mr.
fine.
Mayor?
Yeah. Fine with me. Yeah, just
okay.
Thank
you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we all vote to approve the minutes then, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 7, to adopt the draft notes of the subgroup meetings reporting to the Community Services Committee already circulated. 7.1, website, social media, and newsletter panel meetings held on the 27th of October, 13th of November, and 4th of December 2020. Does anyone have any comments on the notes, or can we approve them? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Item 8, the budget review. To review budget progress for the current financial year 2021 and to determine budget requirements for 21-22. Unfortunately, we don't have the Deputy Town Clerk with us tonight. However, I know he did make some notes to ask for anyone that had any detailed questions to forward them directly to him. Does anyone have any comments or issues that they would like to discuss concerning the budget? Councillor Voss.
Just in the notes that he put in for cemetery and tranquility, easy for me to say, tranquility garden fees, he's proposing an inflation increase of 0.9%. Can we discuss that when we do get down to that in the town clerk's open report, please?
Yes, sure. Yeah,
Okay,
certainly.
thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments on anything relative to the budget? Okay, can we?
Sorry, Chair, can I just actually ask where it says designated reserve requirement?
Yes.
Yeah, because we've actually been using our reserves substantially and actually running them down, we are not in any position where we're going to find ourselves not without sufficient reserves, because I mean we can't go below a certain level and operate legally. So I just wanted to check that we are comfortable with where the reserves are.
I think as far as I was aware from the Deputy Town Clerk, then he was indicating that we should transfer over some of the current reserves into the next financial year. Councillor Coles.
Thank you. Yes, that's pretty much what it was, because it was essentially suggesting that funds unused for projects this year be carried forward and be used as the basis for budgets next year. We've also been discussing building designated reserves, such as the building reserve, once the work has been done on the town hall, that we start replenishing that gradually over the years until obviously the big jobs are required again. I think it is just a matter of being mindful of maintaining reserves if there is a specific project in mind and there is a rainy day cushion, if you like, but not keeping hold of the money for the sake of it. So, which is why we were asking for the chairs of the various new committees to have their budget requirements in, so that we could be looking at the demands that were coming up for next year's budget.
If I just
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Fradgley.
If I can just follow that up. I mean, I am aware that we've been using reserves, and I think quite rightly we've been running the reserves down, but we can't keep on running the reserves down, and we need to actually all of us be aware of when we get to that point when there might have to be some very difficult decisions made, because we do have to keep you know, a safe level of reserve. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Is everyone happy? Is everyone happy with the items? Councillor Voss. Can you unmute, Richard?
Sorry, I thought we were going to come on to the fees and I got that wrong separately, but for the Tranquility Gardens and the cemetery later on, but we're not, it's part of this pack. So I do think we ought to discuss that. And there are two things I want to discuss. The proposal to increase by 0.9%, and also in the schedule, Stratford-upon-Avon Cemetery, their appendixes D and F and the respective proposals, the following fees, payments and sums will be increased by 200% where the person to be interred or in respect of whom the right is granted is not an inhabitant. And we've talked about this in the past informally, but we've never had a really thorough debate upon whether that is the right amount to charge or we should be charging for more, and in particular in view of the limited space in the cemetery, which will ultimately mean possibly not having enough room for people who live in Stratford-upon-Avon if we take many more plots for people who live outside. And I think one of the things we've said is informally again that the fees being charged, even at double, which is 200%, are not enough of a deterrent, is a bad word, but it doesn't weight the charge against those who are living outside Stratford and can live anywhere who want to take a burial plot in the cemetery. So I'd like to discuss whether or not 200% is enough, whether it should go to 300, 400, 500%. I know that sounds extreme, but if you live in some foreign land somewhere, or in some distant county and you want to get buried in Stratford-upon-Avon cemetery, it doesn't seem to me that 200% for that is a great deal. And equally, whether the 0.9% increase, because it's RPI, is that statutory, mandatory? Can we increase it more, particularly when we're looking at a loss of income from other areas? So I don't know whether this is the right place to do it, or if we don't do it now, if it'll be too late and we'll just have to live with what we've got. And I appreciate that Phil Mills is not here to advise us.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Howe and then Councillor Fradgley, please.
Yes, I'd just like to just check with my colleagues here in that in terms of unused budget, yes, from this calendar year being rolled over to the next. Do we not want to wish to top that up at all from our general reserve, and to be able to preemptively jump on things within the next financial year? Things that we've done in the past. I think special projects and grants, for example, various things sometimes come up within the year, and it might be right for us to say that we shouldn't have a designated reserve for that, and we should, if something comes up on the 1st of April, that organisation has to wait 12 months to receive anything. And then again, simultaneously with the street furniture, we've recently, as far as I can understand, installed very sort of wanted and successful bus shelter, and for similar things like that, again, whether these things kind of sometimes just arise within the middle of the year, and whether any colleagues think that setting up designated reserves for those purposes above what the surplus would give us for next year.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Fradgley.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Councillor Voss was saying about people from outside Stratford looking to be buried in the churchyard. I do think we need some figures on how many, I'm not sure, do we have the figures on how many grave plots are left and what the projection is for that to be sustainable for people in Stratford? And is there any leeway in that for people from outside Stratford? And I would agree that if you're coming from outside Stratford, if it is getting quite close, then we do need to look at the charges there. But on the other hand, we've also got the Tranquility Garden. Now, I've made use of that for family members in having bricks there. So if you do want to come to Stratford and have your presence in Stratford after your death, then the Tranquility Garden is a fantastic option. And I think we should be looking at promoting the value of the Tranquility Garden.
Capacity in both places applies, doesn't it, Councillor Fradgley? So we need to know that, what the demand is, and what the rationale is for people wishing to be buried in the cemetery in Stratford from outside of Stratford, and also looking at our charges vis-a-vis other cemeteries as well, of this sort of style, if there's any possibility. I don't want to be, it's a difficult subject, but it is a great cost to us, and we're not aiming to be a profit centre, but we do have a responsibility to the people who live in Stratford-upon-Avon to make sure that they do have that opportunity first and foremost.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Fradgley, would you like to go back?
Yeah, I do think there's a piece of work to be done here before we actually make that decision, so we fully understand what the dynamics are there, and then we can actually make a decision. We're looking at the date for the next meeting. It's not till the 6th of April. Is that sufficient time to come forward with a briefing note on where we stand, and then we can actually make a decision at the next meeting?
Lisa?
I think because it was deferred from the last meeting, they did want more of a decision to be made at this meeting, but it's something I'd have to go back to Phil to ask. Yeah.
I think in all fairness, that's why Phil asked for everyone to forward any detailed questions that we had on these to him directly, so he could have probably already answered the questions for us before the meeting took place. But I think it looks as though we're going to have to ask him this information before we can make that decision. Councillor Coles.
Thank you. Also, 6th of April is too late. I mean, I think Deputy Town Clerk is going to need these numbers in order to fix his budget. So, you know, either we have an additional meeting to sort this out in time, or we go with what's recommended and then do the work next year so that the following budget is adjusted to accord with our decision.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Fradgley.
Could I just actually ask Councillor Voss, I mean, could we make a proposal now to increase the burial charges for people coming from outside Stratford to a modest degree, and then next year look at it in more detail, because you might have to do a much bigger hike next year, because we'll know much more about how big the hole in our budget and, you know, costs and how many, etc., etc.
Well,
so as an interim, put in for a modest increase.
I mean, I don't know what, I'd agree with you. I mean, I don't know what a modest increase is. Is a modest, at the moment we're saying that there's two separate things, aren't there? There's the 0.9%, and I think there's probably guidance on that anyway. You know, could we go to 1.5%, 2.5%? What is the upper limit, like anything we go to? And the other one is about the outside burials, people coming in for outside burials, and currently that's set at 200%. Now, arguably, a modest increase would take to 300% or 250. I don't know what, I really don't know. I don't know. But I do, my instinct tells me that if you can come from a foreign land or a distant county to get buried in Stratford-upon-Avon, and that's really where you want to get buried, then price isn't going to be the big issue. That sounds again cruel, but that's where you want to have your internment. And I wonder whether, you know, we are underselling ourselves bluntly there. But I don't know. And I realise we're a bit late in talking about this, so we could take advice and we could come back together again in turn, or we could make a recommendation, as you say, for a short-term increase and have a really hard look at it for 22, 21, 22, or, you know, 22, 23 for discussion.
Vic, would you like to come in there, please? And then Councillor Cleave.
All I was going to say is currently people are paying for plots at 3 times. So if somebody rang Emma now, tomorrow, and they lived outside of Stratford, they are actually paying 3 times the amount for the grave, for the plot, and for the interment. So, and they're quite happy with that.
I bet they are. It says it does say 200% on the paperwork. That's why
it's actually currently 3 times.
So, yeah, okay, all right.
It's an additional 200%.
Yeah, that's what it says on the paperwork, not 300%.
But
so they're paying 3 times 795, I think.
Sure. Okay. So that, I mean, I don't know whether that's the right amount.
Thank you, Vic.
And they probably are happy. I mean, what would they be? The question is, what would they be happy in paying? It's just like anything, isn't it? What is the amount that we could potentially, and is fair to charge? I mean, I don't know the answer. It may be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And Jenny's point, so Councillor Franchi's point is right. If those burial plots get sold to those outside Stratford, those inside Stratford will not have the opportunity, which is probably the most important thing about all of this.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Cleave, sorry for the delay.
Don't worry. Actually, can I just, it's not part of the initial question, but if I can go to Vic, the 3 times amount, is So are we doing 200% on top of the 3 times? Is that what we're now looking at? Or are we still, because obviously 200% is less than what they're currently paying.
So if you live in Stratford and you want to purchase a plot, it is this is right, isn't it, Lisa? It's I'm sure it's 785 actually for the plot.
Yeah.
Then the first interment on that plot is 520. So
580.
580, sorry.
And
So then
subsequent to 520.
if you live out of Stratford town, then you're looking at 3 times £785 for the plot, and then you're looking at 3 times £520 for the first interment.
May I ask then, do we know yet, do we have the figures on how many people do we get from outside the town applying for plots? Because I think that will be a good indication. I personally think that we should go with the budget proposal for this year and potentially then do more of an in-depth study. One, see if we're putting up the charges again to see that is that having an effect on the previous year, and then do more of an analysis, as you said, Councillor Voss, for the following year based on where people are coming from and has the increase made a difference? Because as you said, it's more important that we cover our residents rather than making it sort of a quick buck. So we've got to make sure that it almost puts people from outside off in a way, so that we have it for the residents. But if people want to spend the money, then they spend the money. But I think it's our residents we've got to watch for first.
Thank you, Councillor Cleve. Councillor Howe, and then Councillor Jenny Fradgley.
I think this does warrant maybe a task and finish group, or someone to look at this more in depth. From memory, I think this council is the one that raised it to 300%. I think this was an item taken to aims and objectives, and we did have some quite in-depth discussion on there. And I think, to summarise, the view was to increase it to 300% seems, whilst ensuring that we had fair policies for people with a genuine tie to the town. For example, husband and wife, where someone is buried, but then someone has to move away to receive care, and we have some very fair and exhaustive rules around where that wouldn't be the case, where it'd be fair to do so. And yeah, I think that probably needs a bit more attention. But I think the increase to 300% was quite recent.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Jenny Fradgley.
If Councillor Cleve was a kind of a proposal, I'd second that we actually run with the figures that we have this year, but actually to put a task and finish group in place, because we used to have a cemetery working party, which I don't believe runs anymore. So I think a very rapid, focused task and finish group to report back to this committee on the detail that we've just raised, so that we could make the decision for next year as to exactly what we're going to do.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. Is everyone okay with that? Can we actually have that as the proposal and vote on it then?
Can we get people to sign up to the committee now? Group, sorry.
Yeah, as I've opened up on this, I'm happy to sign up to do on the task and finish. We could certainly have one meeting to get the facts, second meeting to decide, and then be able to come back for the April meeting with a proposal looking forward to next year, wouldn't we?
Okay, so we have the proposal then. We have a seconder, and we have Richard, are you the only volunteer for the task and finish group? Or was anyone else like to be?
Come on, are we? Two compadres.
Councillor Howe, would you like to make a comment first, please?
Yes, I'll sign up for that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor, Mr. Mayor?
There is a cemetery committee which hasn't met, and I think the cemetery committee was just myself, Councillor Wall and Councillor Dyer, and there hasn't been anything that's cropped up that's required a specific meeting. So that I mean, I'm happy to sit on, because I'm on the cemetery committee, so I'm still happy to sit on. I just wanted to make a comment, not about the proposal, but about capacity. And I think I've seen a note from Sarah to say that the number of burials this year was actually down, which she thought was a bit strange. So I don't think there is currently a critical impact on capacity within the cemetery. And of course, we have open negotiations to purchase the land next door, which is currently allotments, to enhance capacity in the future. So that's already in hand, so to speak.
That's all true. Town is expanding, and also the number of residential homes and extra care homes are expanding at a rate of knots. You can deduce from that what you want. But
yeah, I agree with that. There's not a right answer. I'll just say it's not. We're not going to run out next year. Is probably the point.
Not next year.
Yeah. And the other thing about the Tranquility Garden, there is lots of capacity for plaques and stone. So that really we should be pushing that wherever possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we all vote on that then, please, for approval? Thank you. That's unanimous. Do we wish to vote on the budget proposal for the fourth draft and the designated reserve, also in accepting what Philip's actually proposed? Or not?
Yes, I think we should vote on it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Can we vote on the budget proposal fourth draft then, please? Councillor Howe?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that if we don't put some additional funds in designated reserves, then it kind of binds us for the next year. In reality, there won't be any more kind of like separate things to refer to finance. The budget and the designated reserves should be it, really.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. That's unanimous. Then, right. Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Coles. Eva. Thank you. Item 9, the Town Clerk's open report. 9.1, to consider charging for the transfer of right of burial in graves to the Stratford-upon-Avon cemetery. Has everyone read the report? And do we have any comments?
Yeah, could I? Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you're before me, I think.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, work that takes a lot of time in the office. There's a fully justified that we charge some admin costs to support that. Emma wasn't suggesting an amount, so I wasn't quite sure what figure was appropriate though. So I'd support charging something, but I wasn't quite sure what we had in mind.
That's a very good comment. I read through it actually, and I think it's a very worthwhile suggestion. However, the report didn't seem to highlight how much the cost was actually the proposed cost was going to be. Councillor Voss.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that, just for clarity, we're talking about the possibility then of charging for every single one probate statutory declaration assignment. So every time there's a change, there would be a charge appended to it. That's what we're discussing, isn't it? Am I right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
And then looking at what that charge should be.
Yes.
Yep, okay, just for clarity.
Councillor Cleave.
Thank you. Yeah, in my mind when I read it, so it's open to interpretation, was obviously it's £40 at the moment for the transfer of rights, and I assumed from what I read that it was going to be charged £40 for every transaction. That was what I read when I was reading it, was that at the moment we're not charging that for those, so it would be £40 then for every admin. That's what I assumed, but I could be wrong.
Okay, maybe Lisa can clarify that for us. Lisa.
Yeah, she hasn't said in the report, but that's how I took it as well. when I read that,
Okay.
is that's what they charge for that. So that's what you continue to charge for the other methods of transfer.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Councillor Rolfe, please.
So does that mean we are not looking for an increase in price? Are we looking to...
It's not an increase in price, it's charging for additional services that we previously didn't charge for, I believe.
Okay, so it does, okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Councillor Voss.
Just to say, I mean, again, we don't know whether these are the right charges or not, but I'm presuming they've either been benchmarked against other local authorities or responsible burial authorities, and presumably that £40 is the current sort of price, and therefore we're confident that that's the right amount as a starting point, I'm presuming.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Cleave and then Councillor Howe, please.
Thank you. Again, maybe that's something when we have the working party, we could look at those fees as well and see if it is benchmark, because it makes sense. And although we're not necessarily putting the current prices up, it'd be interesting to see how many we get in a year of that we've been doing as the free transfers, because again, we could be making money on that just by adding the additional fees without putting them up. But it'd be interesting. So if we could put all of that in that working party, it'd be good to see the facts and figures behind it.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Councillor Howe, you did have your blue hand up. Did you want to?
Oh, yes. I propose we, just to second Councillor Cleave's comments there. I think my proposal is to take the suggestion to charge a fee for each transfer by any method, and then secondly to keep the price at £40 for any method, but refer it on to the task and finish group.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. And you're seconding, Councillor Cleave? Yeah. Can we have a vote on that then, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. 9.2, to receive a verbal update from the Finance and Facilities Officer on the internal and external works planned for the Town Hall.
Okay.
Vic, over to you.
Okay, thank you. The decorating plan starts on the 4th of January, just after Christmas. From next week, all the paintings and curtains will be coming down. So I've got a plan of each day next week. So I've got a builder coming in on Monday who's building a frame for me, one up in the ballroom and one downstairs in the committee room. All of the paintings, which are currently hanging and on site in all rooms, will be kept safely and wrapped within these 2 frames. On Wednesday next week, all the curtains will be coming down and they will be kept safely as well in one of the rooms. And then we will be ready then for the decorator to start. He's anticipating that it will take up to 8 weeks. So we're looking at January and February. So there will be no bookings in the Town Hall throughout those months. And Lee, the decorator is LP Decorators, which was all put through the Town Hall Income Facilities panel. It'll be a neutral freshen up, so nothing too dramatic. And that's about it. Is there any questions on the decorating before I move on to the external works? No.
Councillor Cleave.
Great. Thanks, Vic. That was really good. I assume just because of COVID, we haven't got any bookings. It's not affecting any weddings or anything that were booked, because I assume have most been cancelled now or postponed at this point?
No, so there aren't any weddings. There's there was a wedding last Saturday and a wedding potentially this Saturday. And then anything else, we're very quiet. And obviously things like coffee mornings and townswomen and things like that, unfortunately, can't really take place at the moment anyway. So we haven't actually had to put people off. So it has worked out how we wanted it to back in the summer with the lockdown. It's worked out perfectly, really.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Vic, would you like to carry on with the external?
Okay. So the external work in September, Stephen Oliver had the list of building consent confirmed. So I believe that lasts up to 5 years. And in November, a conservator did a survey of the external walls of the town hall. We're waiting just to get back, some of the more detailed report back from him. Because of COVID, we actually changed. So we were going to go originally, for those who don't know, with the external works first, but then because of COVID, we flipped it, and that's why we're going with the decorating. So I'd like to think come the new financial year, we should then start to see some of the external works planned. I'm being in touch with Stephen Oliver, and I'm waiting to actually receive a plan back from him. So for now, that's where we're at, really.
Thank you, Vic. Councillor Voss.
I remember the previous income and facilities meeting that we talked about two things. So Vic, just to remind me, one was about the tidying up of wires and pipes and all those kind of, and also the opportunity to do some sort of presentational work over and above the structural work to create that feeling of wow for the town hall. Was that all? Yeah, we're on with that.
Stephen's taken that on board, and and he believed that was a good idea too. To when you come up to the town hall, it's a wow. Yeah. Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. What's the time scale on it? Did you say? Sorry, I missed.
For the outside work, I think we're looking at about 16 weeks.
Wow.
That would be for how long all the scaffolding would go up for.
Fantastic, Vic. Brilliant. Hard work for you, but brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, a follow-on question from Councillor Voss. I take it that we're waiting for Stephen to put together a schedule of works that will then go out to tender.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how long the tendering process will take and when they'll be able to schedule it in. But I know originally we were hoping to do the work sort of shortly after Shakespeare's birthday, so sort of May, June. Is that still practical?
That's right. That's how I've left things with Stephen, but obviously I'm still waiting to hear from him at the moment from the report that the conservator made.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Fradgley.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor has asked, the question I was going to ask has been answered. I wanted to know when it was actually going to happen and how much impact that would actually have on the activities of the town, but that's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. And any more questions? No. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Vic.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Item 9.3 to agree the calendar for the Community Services Committee, which was Appendix I. I presume everyone's had a chance to review them. Does anyone have any comments or issues, or are we in agreement that we can approve them? Councillor Howe.
I'm sure I won't be popular by suggesting this, but I think I was the one to originally suggest only 4 meetings and not a 5th. But I think we've all kind of appreciated the large gap between January and April. I don't know whether it's worth considering a 5th meeting.
So everyone, let's thank you, Councillor Howe, for raising that. Let's just see what everyone else thinks. Councillor Rolfe.
I tend to agree with Councillor Howe. I think maybe we should schedule a meeting if possible in February. And I think from my point of view, it would have been nice rather than April if we could have had the date put on it. I know I'm being petty, but you know, April, July, it would have been nice to just have the date next to it. But yeah, I agree. I think we perhaps should have. Will we have a better idea in February, Councillor? How do you think on costs for the future? What's your feeling? I mean, I think we should have a meeting in February.
I think sorry to jump in there, but I think it's probably too late to go into the budget review process at that point. I can't remember the exact calendar, but at that point it's going to be finalised and going to council very soon after.
Thank you both. Councillor Voss, please.
Yeah, just interesting thing about the budget you make there. My experience of doing budget for 30 years with quite big sums is almost the minute you do them, they're out of date. So if that's not an argument to have a meeting in January or February, I don't know what is. But we are becoming more familiar with these responsibilities, both for the new committees and a more in-depth view of finance, the implications of the reserves and expenditure. So I do think January, February would set us up nicely, a debrief on the budget, the implications of it, and opportunities to make any changes. And we have talked to Phil Mills about this in the past, and he has said it's possible to take the budget and not treat it as a fixed document. So that would be a good time to do that, because once you see it in writing, you're then in a better position to reflect upon it. So yes, January, February at the very latest, I would say. But I do think now, yeah, a short meeting just on that focus would be important.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Cleeve, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with that. I don't know if Lisa's got all the calendars of meetings in front of you, if we can fit one in January. I think losing one around budget or finalising the budget time was probably not the best, as nice as it seems. So yeah, if we could potentially have another one for all the reasons as Councillor Howe and Councillor Voss stated.
Thank you, Councillor Cleeve. Lisa, would you like to comment there?
Yes, I mean, I think because the actual calendar of meetings for this year has been set, we'd have to call like an additional meeting for this year. We wouldn't be able to change the actual calendar, but that's something that the town clerk and I could look at when putting together the calendar for next year. Obviously, an additional meeting could be any time. It doesn't have to be Tuesday at 6. So if you wanted to propose a meeting for January or February, then that's something we could do.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Cleeve, would you like to come back on that or not? Or have you?
Yeah, I'm happy. Can we propose an extra date then, put in January if we're not tied to the Tuesday afternoons or evenings when we've got the other council meetings? Maybe we could find a date. Maybe we could propose that we have one in January and decide on the date when you're not under pressure to find one.
Certainly, I think that's a very valid comment, and I think we should. Can I just let Philip and Jenny, Councillor Howe, please?
Yes, just to go back on the point made by Councillor Voss, I think we are in a very different situation, and I think the intention behind the new committee structure was to also use budgets as delegated authority. So I think we do have to think of them as strict pieces of paper as opposed to ones which we can ignore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Fradgley.
I just wanted to, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, but I think after Christmas, we might be in a very fast moving and slightly different world as the vaccinations and stuff comes through. And we might be looking at other pressures of people actually wanting to do things. And we might be actually having to look at requests for the use of the town hall, etc., etc. So I think there might be other issues coming on board then hopefully as the world opens up, as well as budget.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. Councillor Howe. Sorry. Okay. In that case, then, I suggest that we propose that we have an additional meeting in January, and if everyone's happy with that, can we have a vote on that, or a seconder? Thank you. And a vote. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 9.4, to consider replacing the cemetery pickup truck. Councillor Howe.
Sorry, we were going to set a date for that meeting.
Ah, right, in January.
In January, yeah.
Yeah.
I suggested, sorry, through you, Chair, I suggested we take time to look at that and give
Okay.
Lisa a chance to look through the calendar.
And
well.
Lisa, I think Lisa, can you look at that, or we'll look at that and we'll come back to everybody with a specific date.
Yeah, I'll have a look tomorrow, and I'll send a doodle poll as Councillor Voss suggested.
Thanks, Lisa. Item 9.4, to consider replacing the cemetery pickup truck. Councillor Howe. Councillor Voss.
So this is something none of us know a great deal about. So, you know, we need to know what are the alternatives: purchase, lease, electric. Councillor Taylor, right?
I thought that question would be raised.
Okay.
So I did do a little bit of research.
Right. I'll set them up. You knock them down.
I actually can't see that there's an electric version out there at this moment in time. However, there are some planned for production next year,
because
but predominantly not in this country.
Right.
So obviously there is a larger market in America for this type of vehicle than there is in the UK. So it looks as though most of the production is going to take, initial production will take place there. I think there was a budget in there for about £15,000.
Yeah.
I did look at alternative vehicles, and it's not out of the budget that we've got would enable us to pick up a much better, pardon the pun, would be able to enable us to procure a much better vehicle for that budget. In fact, and that was just an initial look, but I couldn't see anything in hybrid or even hybrid. So if we're looking for the green and an energy efficient vehicle here, there doesn't appear to be one in the UK at the moment.
Well, I think we also need to know what is the best guesstimate as to when we need to replace. Are we talking about it with a view to it being replaced in the next 6 months, year, 2 years? And also we need to, as you very well know, factor in things like the cost of servicing and repair, all of those things. And so we're just talking here broadly. I mean, my view is we can't make a decision at the moment, but if we're starting to have a discussion, those are the kind of things that you know very well, Councillor Taylor and others, will need to bear in mind. And it might be that it's an 18-month, 2-year programme, by which time there may well be, because we're seeing all sorts of electric vehicles coming on stream.
I think this is going to be a similar exercise for me as the mayoral car was. So there's a lot of work to be done in looking at potential vehicles, lead times, costs, everything. So I think for me, there's a lot more information that we need to look at before any decision is even made.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Cleeve.
Thank you. So if you said that there's a £15,000 budget to replace the truck, is that what you said?
As far as I'm aware, I think is that not
the £15,000 in vehicle reserves?
Vehicle reserves.
Okay.
That would, at that point, if we were looking to purchase then at that, it would be a second-hand vehicle for that amount.
It was second-hand vehicles that I briefly looked at. Yes.
Yeah. Because potentially, I mean, as someone who drives a pickup and is very conscious of that it's not a green vehicle, obviously it would be great to see when the green vehicles come down. So I think, again, as Councillor Voss said, we look to see when you need to replace it. Could we eke it out a bit longer to see if something does come onto the market in the UK from a more economic, environmental point of view? But if we do need to replace it, I think probably a second-hand newer model would still be more environmentally friendly than the older one that we already
Certainly,
have.
yeah.
So we're still going to have some savings from emissions and everything, even with a newer vehicle.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Councillor Howe.
Yes, it's just to reiterate that is the total vehicle contingency fund. And
Okay, thank you.
Can't remember what status we were with the mayoral car as well.
I think the mayoral. I mean, it's a similar situation. We're looking at lifespan of the current vehicle, and obviously at this present moment in time, its lack of use has probably extended its lifespan slightly. Thank you, Councillor Howe. Can I
just add that I'm sure I'll get some terrible looks from people in here that possibly the cemetery pickup truck is possibly slightly more important than the mayoral car, and probably gets a lot more use, so is probably priority number one.
From what I've seen of that vehicle, I would agree with you.
They could double up, couldn't they? If they're not having.
I think that is a fantastic idea.
And a treble up, we could use it as a carnival float.
Yeah. Having utilised that vehicle very much to move lots of table tennis tables around, I think it's seen better days. Councillor Coles.
Yeah, so I think it's mostly covered what I was going to say, but I think we need to get a fairly accurate of the anticipated life expectancy of the pickup truck. We may not have 18 months to play with, so I think that's the most important thing, to find out how long we've got to play with before it sits down and refuses to go any further, because they're fairly dependent on it, so we can't afford to be without it, any form of transport for them.
They do have two vehicles, though, Councillor. There is another vehicle, a larger vehicle that they utilise as well. So,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Councillor Coles.
I don't have any problem with the cemetery truck being the priority over the cemetery over the mayoral car. That's
especially this year, eh? Especially
this year. And I agree with everything that's been said. I think we need to probably realise that the cemetery pickup. I mean, it's if it broke down tomorrow irreplaceably, what would be our contingency plan? It would be ideal if we had a lead-in time and we could be able to do something over an 18-month period. But I just think we need to have a contingency plan of if something happened tomorrow, what would we do? And whether we just hire a car temporarily or whatever, that's something. But I think we just need to understand, because I think moving to electric or hybrid or whatever in the future is obviously going to be the way forward, but we might not have time to do that. So whether what is our interim approach almost?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Fradgley, please.
Can I actually propose that we bring some information to our interim meeting in January, February on the pickup truck, so we can make a decision at that point?
Certainly. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Can we vote on that then, please?
Aye.
Councillor Cleave, would you like to make? Did you want to?
No, I just want to put my hand up to speak again, just to say that, yeah, I agree that the truck is a priority, and maybe with the figures that we've had, obviously this year doesn't really count for the mayoral car, but if we've got some figures on the CO2 emissions from the mayoral car, I would assume the CO2 emissions from the truck will be higher. So from a greener point of view for the town council, replacing the truck is far more vital than replacing the mayoral car.
Exactly, that is correct.
So, and it's used more, as we said,
yes.
even in a normal year, it's used more. So that's where our savings will be from CO2. So I'm all for that.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. And that is unanimous. So thank you very much. Item 9.5, to consider an amendment of signage in the Garden of Remembrance and Holy Trinity Churchyard in order to tackle antisocial behaviour. I presume everyone's read the comments in the reports. Does anyone have any comments with regards to both of these potential? Councillor Voss.
Yeah, I mean, I read the comments, put an alcohol-free zone sign up. I don't want to be a cynic. There's one up in the Firs, meaningless. And the Firs is next to the police station, as you know, and I have never, ever, ever, and I've lived there just on the edge of the Firs, oops, careful what I'm saying here, 16 years, I've never seen any enforcement at all. So I suspect that whilst it would be nice to have a sign up, you know, by all means, but don't believe that it will lead to any enforcement at all. I mean, and I'm not just going for willy-nilly CCTV, but you know, if you're looking at issues of antisocial behaviour and gaining evidence, pretty much the only way of doing it is CCTV nowadays.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Fradgley.
Just say that the alcohol restricted area notices which have been up in the town were unenforceable, and conversations that we've had with the police, the town clerk and I, and actually the mayor have had with the police just pre-COVID about signage in the Remembrance Gardens. There was, if I remember correctly, Mr. Mayor, there was an agreement from the police that the new regulation notices would go up so that they could actually enforce if there were issues. So I think it's we need to make sure that if you're going to put a notice up, it's the enforceable one and not just the frim-fram one. Because I would agree with Councillor Voss, it's not often enforced, but then it's up to people around to actually make sure the police are there at the right time if we possibly can do. But they can't do anything, I think, on the present signage.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. Councillor Rolfe.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Fradgley. Might it be worth having a chat to the police and asking them to kind of suggest some wording? It may be a wise thing to do. I don't know. We need something that is enforceable, because otherwise it's completely pointless. I mean, every time I drive up Southern Lane and I look into the Remembrance Garden, there's always a couple of people there drinking. So, I mean, you how you enforce that, I do not know, but it might be worth chatting to the police about it and see what they could suggest, is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. Mr. Mayor.
I might have completely imagined this, but I thought I'd read something somewhere, which I think possibly Sarah sent out, saying that the police had contacted her and the banning order hadn't been renewed. And they were leaving the signs up, but they were unenforceable and it hadn't been renewed. And I just, have I made that up, or is that true?
In her report.
Yeah, I think that is true, but there are issues arising all over the place at the moment. So I think the police are coming under more pressure to upgrade their signage to make it enforceable.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Cleeve.
If, as Councillor Fradgley said, that there aren't new signs with enforceable rules on them, and I'm not 100% because I knew they were out of date, but were there. If we get those put up, even if the police can't respond to it because they're stretched already, at least we can make official reports about it, and then if there's enough reports of antisocial behaviour there, they will do something as well. So if there are new signage, that's what we need to look at.
Thank you, Councillor Cleeve. Councillor Coles.
Thank you. I completely agree with what everyone said. I was just actually just looking at the report again. I think with the question of the dog mess in the churchyard, absolutely needs to be signs, but I think there needs to be something more, because that is just completely inexcusable. There's no justification for that, and I think possibly maybe it might be worth approaching, say, the Herald or something like that, to have some sort of publicity campaign to make people aware that it's happening and make it much more visibly wrong for people to do it and make people more aware that it's happening. And it's just wrong. I mean, there's just no excuse for it.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Certainly the Garden of Remembrance is a particular issue. I walk past that every day, and every day we have the same people sitting in there drinking. I think putting additional signage up, as long as it stipulates that it is enforceable, is a great idea, but it then needs to be enforced. And until that happens, I can't see anything. I mean, Councillor Voss has made a very good point that previously in the Firs we had this issue, and it's almost as though the people are moved from area to area, from enforcement to enforcement. So I think maybe we need to speak to the police, as Councillor Fradgley has suggested, and get the best advice to what signage we actually put up there. But then we need to keep reporting it to them to make sure that it is actually enforced. Councillor Fradgley.
I have long conversations with the PCSO and with the local sergeant about antisocial behaviour across my ward. In fact, I had a long conversation with PCSO Anita Redding the other day, and I did ask her if they can actually increase their walk-bys, because what we had agreed was that there would be more walk-bys the Remembrance Garden, and she said they have had more walk-bys, but she has never herself seen the behaviour that she would have to go in and say this isn't on. To say to unkempt people sitting at the side who are quietly talking, you can't really go and tell them, and they're not drunk, because it's restricted alcohol, it's not no alcohol. You're constantly up against these balanced conversations, and I have actually asked for more surveillance. Let's see if we can actually get it. I know Tony saw one of the guys actually urinating in there the other day, and I think something is going to happen to try and actually do something after that. And the issue with the dog in there aren't dogs allowed in there, but the PCSA said to me, if the dog is kept under control and actually by the bench, she feels it's difficult to say get out with the dog. So the conversation's being had, but we're not actually where we need to be at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. Councillor Cleave.
Yeah, I think what's important to remember, if you think it's deemed antisocial behaviour, in addition to reporting it on 101 or online, which obviously the police prefer, also you can report antisocial behaviour to the district council. And so I think information to all the residents to do that if they see it is vital. Just in my ward, there was an area where there was a lot of antisocial behaviour going, so I kept telling my residents to report it to the district council and to the police. It's been done, and now we're having a CCTV camera, temporary one, for 3 months. So it does work. So we just need to, it's that information, getting people to actually do something. As you said, the antisocial behaviour, if you do it to district council as well, they will keep records of this, and then it establishes that pattern, and more can be done. Without that pattern, nothing, they can't do anything.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Councillor Fradgley.
Sorry, just finally, with some fairly major difficulties, I actually put out a letter in conjunction with the district, giving all the contact information and how to give that contact information. If anybody actually wants a copy of that letter to send out to residents in specific areas that would need that information, let me know, and I'll let you have a copy of it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fradgley. Do we wish to, on both of the signages then, do we wish to seek, do we propose that we seek advice from the local police before we pursue doing anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to propose then that we actually seek the advice of the local police on both of those signages, Can we vote to agree on that, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the next virtual meeting of the Community Services Committee at this moment in time will take place on 6 p.m. on the Tuesday, the 6th of April, 2021, or at 6:30 p.m. if a physical meeting is to be held in Town Hall. Just like to say this is our last Community Services meeting of the year. So to everybody watching out there, we'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas